Hi, welcome to SWH Book Talks. This is your April edition. Wanted to share some of the new books that we have in the library for you. So starting off, a number of you have been asking for some murder mysteries, so happy to share a couple of new titles. Found a copy of a book by Canadian author Eric Walters, and in this story we meet Ian, who has to do some community service. And at the soup kitchen where he's working, he runs into what turns out to be a Canadian soldier who's now homeless. And he gets to know our soldier and discover that he served in some missions in Rwanda. And so we learn a lot more about the Rwanda mission. So if you like soldiers, you're going to like Shattered. Speaking of soldiers, we got a copy of The Grand Escape. And what's really cool about this title is it's based on World War I, where we had some prisoner of war folks who are excellent at escaping, and they put them into this camp called Hellminden. They nicknamed it Hellminden because it was so awful. And so we've got some prisoners who forge documents, they smuggle in supplies and bribe guards, and it's the biggest prisoner of war breakout of World War I. So there's an adventure story for those of you who love war stories. Speaking of adventure, we've got a new story called Drone Chase, where we've got a bear cub on the loose, and so a young boy decides to put his drone to good work and try to hunt down this bear cub. So follow the adventure as he comes across a gang of poachers. Now, speaking of adventures, we added a fourth book in Marie Lu's Legends series. So Rebel is another book in the series. So if you haven't checked out that dystopic author, she has a lot of great books these days. Switching gears a little bit, we move into a story by Jacqueline Woodson called Before the Ever After. And here we meet a teenage boy, and his father was a pro football player who was very popular, everyone's hero. But he's worried about his dad. He's forgetting stuff, has turned moody, and it's perhaps because he's had so many concussions. So read about what happens for ZJ and how he handles that. On a story that takes us to Africa, we've got My Totem Came Calling. This is a collaboration between an Alberta author and a lady from Zimbabwe. And so we meet a 17-year-old schoolgirl in Zimbabwe. She starts suffering from memory lapses, and she's seeing a zebra in all sorts of places. So she ends up going back to her ancestral village to try to figure out what's going on. We've got a two-part series by a new author. Jasmine Kaur wrote a book about a character who's had something tragic happen. She ends up being assaulted and she becomes pregnant, and so she flees her country and comes to North America with her daughter, but she doesn't have any paperwork, so she's undocumented. And so as her daughter grows up, she learns the story of what's happened to her mom, and so she gets involved trying to help them escape getting sent back. And so this book is a mix of narrative, of poems, and there's some images and sketches. So this is a little bit of a mixed media format. So if you want to try out a new author, that's Jasmine Kaur. We found a very interesting title right now that's getting very interesting reviews. It's called The Bridge. And for those of you who like a gritty story like 13 Reasons Why, we meet two characters who are suicidal, and they arrive at the George Washington Bridge at the same time intending to jump. So the author has decided to play out all four scenarios. So we get it where Aaron jumps and Tilly doesn't, Tilly jumps and Aaron doesn't, they both jump and neither of them jumps. So in this astonishing story, we get to see the after effects of our characters and what happens to friends and family in this situation. So that's The Bridge. Now, Jason Reynolds is an author that we've been highlighting a number of times because we've been talking about his series Long Way Down. This is the graphic novel. We've got the copy in French and English. We also acquired some of his earlier books. So Ghost is about an angry African-American boy, and turns out he's an awesome track runner. So this is about him training with an Olympic coach. And then All American Boys is a story where we meet Rashad, and Rashad gets beaten by a police officer. And really, he was just in the convenience store having a bad day. He gets beaten. A white boy also sees the incident, and it turns out that the police officer is the older brother of one of his friends. And so there's conflict. Does he tell on the boy? What does he do? And so there's lots of conflict and good conversation that can be had with that book. So if you like Jason Reynolds, those might be a couple great titles to check out. And lastly, I wanted to end on a fun note. I read this one recently, and it's tweet cute, and it is super cute. So if you like a good little meet cute, if you will, you can meet Pepper. Her family has a food chain, and she moves to a new school and meets Jack. And Jack has a side job working in his family's deli, and the two of them end up in competition between her family's restaurant, Big League Burger, and his family's deli, and they end up in a little viral Twitter war, and they're tweeting snarky tweets back and forth between each other, and so you can read to find out what happens between Pepper and Jack in Tweet Cute. So I hope that gives you some ideas what you can read in this month of April as the spring showers come along, and so there you go. Happy reading!